Today's episode of Dating Disasters features Rose, a woman whose date threatened to harm them both if he didn't get what he wanted.
Hello. I am going to be sharing what is probably the scariest dating experience I've ever had. Um, I had done, the apps before and it was fine. I never had anything like bad. We all have our, that was sketchy sort of date. Um, but I had put most of that on hold because I was going to be going abroad for a period of time and actually happened to meet this guy on Instagram. And I didn't think, much of that. I had always, I had a public account since I was a teen. And we really just started out as friends. We had stuff in common. Like I said, I didn't think much of it. I was going to be moving. We were still, distance wise, not close enough that anything was scary at first. I moved back to the States after that had come to an end. And because of the circumstances I was coming back under, it was due to a family member my grandmother going into memory care. So there was a lot of work to do at my family's home and just going, cleaning up, going through stuff. So it still didn't allow for that closeness that he was desiring. So there was still like this degree of separation until stuff finally slowed down and it's like, hey, I can see you. And that's when it was this complete 180. He was not the nice person that I talked on the phone with or messaged with or FaceTime with. I mean, all the things that we were doing. And it was, understandably unsettling. There had been things that I had chosen to ignore because we had met each other at a time in our lives that we were both, dealing with a lot. So I had, just written them off as that. It was subtle comments about the way I dressed or about having male friends, despite the fact that that's how he started out. So I'd not clocked them as concerning until after the fact. And when I started to try and finally, put boundaries in place, because I'd never really done that. It had just always been, we would talk mostly when he asked or, do things on his timeline. So I'd never really tried to put up a lot of boundaries because, again, you have that degree of separation, or at least it feels like it, despite the fact that just because this person isn't in front of you, they're still getting in your head and under your skin. So now I'm seeing this person I wasn't expecting him to be. And again, it started out subtle, and one of the first things that he said that, deeply unsettled me was, why are you upset? It's not like I hit you. Despite the fact that he, would have just said the most, horrible, degrading, belittling, whatever word you want to apply to it thing right before that would hurt anyone. And I still wanted to just try and, think that it was fine because you spend this time talking to somebody and you get a false sense of who they are because they can play a character so easily when they're not right in front of you and when you have other life distractions and you want to give them the benefit of the doubt because they too have other life distractions. It came to a head when we started getting into an argument about my boundaries and my discomfort and wanting to, figure things out because of how you have built somebody up in your mind versus how you're seeing them, and you don't know if this is because we're just meeting, or this is because it's still new and we've had this other interaction before. And we happened to be in the car. And as I was just getting more steadfast in trying to be firm, he was getting far more erratic in his driving, to the point that he is then, saying how much he just wants to die, how much I don't care about him, that he's always known he cared about me more, and just continuing to up the erratic anger. And that's unfortunately when it started to sink in that is not, that none of what he'd been doing previously was okay. I'm in a situation where I have no control. I'm the passenger. And then proceeding, continuing with the anger and going from I want to die to, threatening us both because of me simply setting boundaries. I just started saying what he wanted to hear, and that finally pushed the point that I could at least get home. And by saying what he wanted to hear of, just, yeah, there's parts of that conversation that I just don't remember because it was so awful to go from this person that I care about, saying they want to harm themselves to then upping that to wanting to harm us both was understandably not something you want to remember and not something you commit certain details to memory, but I just backed off the arguing and instead turned, to just try and be calm to at least get home. And I did that, and he started to call, text, Snapchat me, try and ask, how can I fix this? We're so meant to be, all of that. And I said, no, none of this was right. None of this is okay. People shouldn't make each other feel this way. And I honestly think that the only reason that he didn't push it further is he knew that I lived with family. So if he showed up again, they knew what was going on. They knew, some details of what had happened. And he was definitely the type that wanted an easy target. So when I was with him, it was easy to control. It would not have been easy to control had he have shown up. It's hard to describe. On a dating app, you're getting a certain snapshot of somebody. On social media, you're getting what feels like a more fleshed out snapshot of somebody. But don't trust that just because you've, talked and messaged and, want to believe the best. Don't trust what somebody can put forth. If something doesn't feel right to you, do not try and assume you know why they're doing that, because they're probably not doing it out of, oh, their life is hard right now, that's why they're belittled. No. People that actually care don't do that. And getting a false sense of who somebody is does make it hard to want to break away because you have this idea built up in your head. But that can hurt you just as much as, it doesn't matter how you meet them. It matters how they treat you. And accepting a false sense of somebody and hoping for the best is just not, it's never going to turn out well for you.
Rose did the right thing by diffusing the situation quickly and prioritizing her safety. Remember that abusers often downplay their words, "I'm just joking," or "you're too sensitive." Don't let that confuse you. If it hurt, it mattered. As always, background check your dates before meeting them. See you next time. We want to thank you for following and subscribing to Dating Disasters. If you have your own story to share, we'd love to hear it. Send us a comment and we'll get back to you. Bye.